interned with Honda. You worked as a consultant with Doro Design.
Yes.
In India, you've been at Artem for I think more than 3.5 years, and now at Dispatch. So quite a journey you've had, and I'm really excited for this conversation. So, hi Navneeth, welcome back to Detox the Design podcast, and today we are going to discuss about Navneeth's journey into transportation design. To give a small, a very exciting thing to talk about, I know, because every time somebody asks me about my journey, I think I share it with the exact enthusiasm, with which I shared for the first time.
Right.
So I think we're very passionate about the field of design.
Right.
We really want to tell our story, and I think part of the reason why I ask every person who comes on the podcast about their journey into design is because a lot of people relate to that, and in India, unfortunately, there are still people who do not understand or have not had the exposure that design can be taken seriously as a career option, right? So these kind of stories do help them understand, even if it is parents, big brothers, big sisters, uncles, aunties, anybody.
Right.
Even students. There's a lot of self-doubt. Is it the right thing? Am I capable of doing this? So would I be able to convert this into a profession? So so these are the reasons why I want to discuss your story. Also because you went on to become a good transportation designer and much more than that. So we will go into that in the later part of the discussion. But let's start with your journey. So how did all of this begin?
Right. So I think that's I think it's a very sort of similar story to a lot of transportation designers out there across the globe. I don't know how it works, but it's like you're born with it, right? You're born with this urge to not pay attention in class and sit and draw cars in the back of all your textbooks and notebooks and whatever the hell else. I have been very fortunate with teachers supporting me along the way. My teachers who never really scolded me for drawing in class or whatever. Like they knew right from then ki haan ye banda theek nahi hota.
You were lucky, man. You were lucky. I was thrown out of the class actually.
No, I think I definitely got lucky. No, because I did also end up going to one of these prep schools, right? So I went to Diksha, and even there, I don't know what it was, but the professors over there also. They were kind of supportive throughout the way, and at one point, I think it got to the point where I was so clear about what I wanted to do that I think it was much easier for me to sort of convince others around me. I am completely aware of how badly I'm fucking up right now, according to them, but clearly, now with my parents it took a lot more convincing in terms of this, but with everybody else it was in a way easier, I guess. I used to sort of sit in the first bench all the time. I never was sort of a guy who studies too much. I've always been sort of a very average-ish student, but
first bench.
I don't know. I've never really related to being on the last bench too much. But I used to be on the first bench and still draw cars. So that's a different story.
Yeah.
I used to just completely own that whole thing. And sort of, I guess teachers appreciated that. At least it's not on the back bench, right? So yeah, that. I found myself over there, and sort of this started off maybe when I was in 5th grade. That's when this actually started. Wow. And my cousin sister, she still has a few of those drawings from back then. And my God, man, the kind of stuff. No, but it was just a continuation of that journey, honestly. Like after 12th, immediately sort of I knew I wanted to get into Yad. I think I'd spoken to a few different people from Yad, and also I think he was Luciano Bove and his blogs, right? So that sort of pointed me in that sort of direction, and I think that was a quite the journey in terms of getting the visa and all of that stuff. Organizing the funds, which is another very big thing coming from a very strictly middle class background, and sort of taking out a education loan to go do something like transportation design. Honestly speaking, if I knew what transportation design actually was and how difficult it would be to get a job, I probably would not have done it. No, but I think that sort of naivety helped a little bit, right? And no, I just sort of, at the age of 17, I found myself in Italy, which was overwhelming.
Crazy thing,
to say the least. Did not know how to cook. And by the end of it, I think by the time I got back home after final year, I think I was like 45 kgs. Which my parents lost their shit, man.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah,
back in the Yad, I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Very blown away by the wind.
Right. No, I think it's just like sitting and just working all the time and like, really not giving yourself enough, let's say, care.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, transportation does that to you. So before we go into that, I wanted to ask about how you convinced your parents for going to Yad and stepping out as a 17-year-old and going to a different country altogether. For a course which is transportation design.
Right. I think a majority of it has to do with the perception, being perceived as someone who's responsible, right? At the age of 17, it's really hard for people to be seen as responsible. But I think in this particular case, one of the reasons was I had taken initiative to sort of not just decide on the college, but also like apply for the college myself and also apply to the scholarship. And I did end up getting that scholarship, right? And I think it was after that and the whole visa process. So like for 6 months, almost every day I had to go to the visa office for some document or the other. And that whole thing, I mean, I used to literally catch a public bus and go there like every single day. And at the age of 17, right? So I think my parents sort of started seeing that, it's like, okay, this guy's not going to give up. We should just let him go. I think that was it. Yeah.
Right. So shows your passion, man. I mean,
I was crazy passionate about it at that point. Yeah.
So how was moving to Italy?
Oh wow! Moving to Italy, I think it was super fun because of like a few of the other Indian guys who sort of came with us as well. Varun and Shubham, shout out to you guys. Right. So I lived with these guys for a while, and that was super fun because there weren't that many Indians at that time. At Yad, and this was the first year of the English courses at Yad. So it was super fun, and honestly, like the Italians were like super nice people, right? Like right from the get-go. Never really experienced any sort of injustice or like racism or whatever, but never experienced any of that. And it was just super nice, the whole experience. Traveling abroad, I mean so far abroad alone was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I think it was overall really fun experience.
Crazy. So how was the teaching experience, which would have been completely different from your 12th?
Oh yeah.
Right? So it's a complete change.
I think the entirety of first year was the entirety of first year at Yad was sort of unlearning. Unlearning every single thing that you've been taught for the past 12 years.
Yeah.
Unlearning rote learning, right? So in India, that is still a very, very big thing.
Yeah.
That you learn things for the sake of learning and you just puke it during the exam.
Yes.
Right? So all of first year, I think, was just unlearning that and understanding that it works differently in, not just in Italy, but in design in general, right? You have to learn by doing. You can't learn by sitting and reading textbooks.
Right.
Although in hindsight, that might not be true, because most of my learning actually came from tutorials. Right, so I'm really not sure about that. In hindsight, yeah, that doesn't make much sense. But no, I think unlearning a lot of things and taking things a different way, taking a more practical approach. I think that was something that was a culture shock, but the best one.
Interesting. So your design education was 4 years at Yad.
It was 3 years, man.
Sorry, 3 years. Yeah.
3 years for the bachelor's.
3 years for the bachelor's. So what did Yad offer you? Like first year you said was unlearning. What was second year? What was third year like?
Right. So Yad was one hell of a journey. I think a lot of it had to do with, and this was something that I do really appreciate about Yad, was there wasn't much sort of teaching involved, like in the traditional sense of the word, right? So you get a brief thrown at you, and how you answer that is up to you.
Yeah.
Right? And this opens up a lot of scope for you to do things in a very different way. Because even though at that time, and I should have known that people expect me to do things a certain way, I think it was because I was so young and like really naive that I ended up like trying out so many different things in terms of software, in terms of techniques, all this kind of stuff. Mostly software though. I think that's one thing that sort of really did like catch on to me, I guess. I don't know, maybe because it was quite like different and nobody else was doing it at that time. It was something that I had a lot of fun with.
That's cool.
Now
talking about the design approach, so like there is a moment in every designer's life which sort of defines how you start thinking or how you start approaching a design brief. Right. So let's talk something about that. The mindset of a designer, like mindset of Navneeth. How did it evolve, and what was the moment?
Right. Now, so until the Young Designer Award, right? Until the Young Designer Award happened, it was always sort of answering a brief at surface level.
Okay.
Right. So it was either like architecture inspired, animal inspired, like very superficial. Right. There was never depth behind answering briefs. Right.
Okay.
But when this happened, this whole raw beauty topic, that the Young Designer Award brought. What was very different was it was such an abstract brief that it made me really think really hard about what exactly this means, right? And that's when I realized that not always is the answer to a complex brief complex, right? So in my particular case, it was symmetry, right? It was one single topic that was, what is raw beauty? It is symmetry, right? In nature, it is symmetry, right? It's just human perception, it's psychology at that point. How do you answer that as a tangible object? Right? I think it was at that point it clicked. Answering a design brief is not at all sort of straightforward. There are no rules to it, right? That's the best part about it. There are no rules to it. Like it's up to you. and how much you sort of open your mind up to answering a certain brief. That sort of makes all the difference, and that's what gives you freedom to explore. Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. And like I've told you before also, like when I saw that project Symmetry, it was something, I think I just moved to Italy a few months ago.
Right.
I met you there, and
Right.
then I saw that project, and very new to transportation design. I was coming from an engineering background,
Right.
and when I saw that, I first saw that it was just a symmetrical vehicle.
Right.
That was the first thing I saw. I said, okay, what's so special about this?
Right.
Right. Then I sort of understood the concept. I think I also had a discussion with you about this in the common area, I think.
Right.
Yeah, you remember that conversation?
Yeah. We sat down for a while.
Yeah.
I think you were horrified by the end of it.
It was the beginning days, so I was a little shaken, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so sort of put a few things into perspective for me, that project, and gave me a different point of view. So something. So because I was like a sponge, I was there, like I was trying to absorb anything and everything that I can learn.
Yeah.
That time, so I was talking to Varun, talking to you, talking to other people from your class. I think it was Damiano. Was it
Damiano was junior, I think. Yes.
Junior, yeah. I think I was talking to him also. He was always there in the common area.
Right.
So I was talking to him and a few other people. I was always, trying to understand what the others are doing and how they're doing, etc., etc. So it was a very good conversation that we had that day, and sort of set a few things into perspective. And then we came to your after what happened after the BMW Young Design Award. I think it was your thesis. The next that I spoke to you was about thesis. So this happened in 2017, right? 17, yeah. Yeah, 17. So 17 January you received the award.
Yeah.
Right? Then 17 May you had the thesis presentation. I went, I think you were preparing the boards when I came into that room.
Probably.
Yeah, right. I remember.
Probably.
I remember.
Right.
He should
right.
Kelly said, like, yeah, we're going to present now. So it was cool. Even that project with Range Rover, right?
Yeah, that was the group project with Range Rover.
Yeah.
And there was another individual project that I had done with Infinity.
Yes. Totally. So let's talk about how the thesis works. Right, just for the audience to know and understand, the listeners. So how does the thesis, how does it begin? People come from the industry, yes. The conversations, the feedback, how does that happen?
Right. So I think it's a very different story for anyone that you would ask, right? Because it's not exactly a straightforward process, because this is the first sort of experience in a designer's life of actually going out there and looking for something, or having an opportunity presented to you, right? So this is where all the networking that you do sort of comes into play, right? And you end up finding a thesis project. So this is knocking on so many different doors until you find something that's interesting and worthwhile to do. And at this point in my life, like I was like, okay, like next step is car designer. Car designer banenge, right? So we got started off. I mean, like the Range Rover project like came to us from Range Rover. It was to everybody, right? Everybody had to answer it in a different way, but essentially it was 6 different projects, I think. But the Infinity one was sort of something that we had to go and look for, and I think this was through Masato that it had come. But essentially we got a design brief, and we were tasked with a relatively serious project, the likes of which we really hadn't done before at that point, and we sort of stuck to a very tried and tested approach. In sort of hindsight, I wish I hadn't. I wish I had sort of taken my own approach towards the entire thing and sort of done it my way. I think I'd have come up with something a little bit more interesting, let's say. But that process did teach me a lot. So every single project along the way that I've done has taught me something or the other. At least you need to learn something or the other from every single project that you do. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. Right? So with this particular one, I think it was 3D modeling and making a video and all of that. I remember signing into the computer lab and like setting like 10 frames on every computer and just like leaving it for like an hour or two and then coming back to like 200 frames, right? And I mean, now like with the computer that I have, like I can render out a 3-second clip in I don't know, like 2 hours or something. But at that time, like computers were slow. Computers were really slow. And so I remember like doing all of these things and learning all of these things, and it was really fun. So I tried out a few things with augmented reality, but I never really ended up putting it through. Now in hindsight, I really wish sort of I'd done all these things.
Right. So how was interacting with the people from Range Rover, the kind of feedback that they would give you for your design? How was that?
Right. I think this was sort of one of the first experiences that we had with a company that sort of brings a sort of a vision-driven approach, right? They have a very sort of fixed rules, fixed philosophies of what a Range Rover needs to be, right? And it's important that we respect these things. So this was, I think, one of those points where I started, like thinking, okay, why does it have to be that? Obviously, I mean, now it makes sense. But at that point, like being the rebellious designer, I was like, why does it have to be this way? Why can't Range Rovers have doors that go like upwards?
Yeah.
Like Lamborghini. No. But seriously, like it was interesting, the whole approach, because they had different insights than what we were used to hearing. And it's always very interesting to get other perspectives. So that was quite beneficial.
Cool. So I think what you just mentioned, every designer goes through that phase when you don't want to listen to, or you kind of think that nahi yaar, ye aise bhi to sakta hai, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of phase everybody goes through it. I've been there myself.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that exactly happens. I think मेरे भी thesis के time पे ही हुआ था, that kind of thing. So yeah, I totally understand. And but then looking back, you understand that it was for a reason, and the experience till now has taught us a lot of things to understand the gravity of it. Yeah. So after you graduated, you Honda.
I did go to Honda
as an intern. Yeah. So how was first thing moving to Japan? Yes.
Yeah, moving to Tokyo. Moving to Tokyo. That was like really. I mean, that was always sort of a dream, I guess. Like, and this was sort of a dream that sort of came from Italy. Like as a child, like my dream was to go become a designer in Italy. Right, but when I was in Italy, I think it was Masato's influence.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but maybe. So. Oh no! I hope Masato doesn't hear this. No, but I really wanted to sort of go experience Japan and Tokyo and sort of explore that side of the world. And I thought it'll be sort of same thing, but not so same. Like it'll be there. Like okay, it won't be too uncomfortable. And then I sort of ended up over there, which was in and itself a very interesting sort of process with the visa and everything. But once I got there, it was very, very different to anything that I was expecting, right? In terms of getting that OEM approach towards design, and sort of realizing ki, the freedoms that you have in design school, you are not going to have in an OEM studio, right? There are certain processes that are followed, and you're sort of expected to sort of fit into those processes, right? So that is when, I mean, for me personally, that was like a whole challenge, right? Where it was sort of very confusing as a period, where, okay, like, this is what I want to do. This is the sort of designer that I have chosen to become. But what I'm expected of is a very sort of like, pehle sketch karo, like sketch as much as possible, then like convert it into clay, and like there's no 3D involved at all in this entire process, right? And the kind of learning, the kind of professional development that I have had during this whole process of design school was exploring as many 3D technologies as possible, right? Like be it parametric design, be it augmented reality, be it whatever. And suddenly being put into an environment where that isn't a part of the process, that takes away the edge that you had.
I get what you're saying.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was very upsetting. Like, that whole process was very upsetting.
Yeah.
And even there, the kind of brief that I was trying to answer was again sort of similar, like really trying to answer a certain brief that I sort of made for myself, even though the brief that they had given was not exactly that. I sort of built a story around it, right? I was trying to sort of fit myself into like what I want to be. But I think that's when I sort of realized, okay, maybe this whole automotive scene is not exactly for me, right? But then you can imagine the sort of confusion going from doing something all the way from 5th grade to the time that you're 20 years old. Right? And 20, 21 years old. And suddenly realizing that what you've always wanted to do isn't exactly what you think it is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that really throws you off.
Yes.
That really, really throws you off, right? Yeah. So that's when I sort of like found myself back in India after the internship.
Yeah.
And I think it was at this point, like, you know, when you truly lose sense of who you really are, no matter what story you try to tell from your portfolio, the true sense of it is going to show through.
Yeah.
Right? And in my particular case, I don't think that fit with automotive at all. Right? So at that point, it was just dealing with that sort of confusion and sort of still applying everywhere. Like, I applied to, I don't know, 158 different places across the globe, in India, abroad, everywhere. And I was like not even getting rejection emails. At one point I told, my email is okay, no? Like, no, but it really did get to that point. But then like there were like a few rejection emails here and there. And that sort of, it was very, very difficult at that point.
So I want to talk about the mindset here. You did say that, like, you did touch upon the points about discovering or rediscovering yourself, let's say. About what you want to do and how to deal with that confusion and then rejections. Because it is very common for a transportation designer to get rejected at, let's say, at least 50-60 places they do get rejected until they find a job, unless you're totally fortunate enough to land an internship right after, or your internship getting converted into a full-time thing.
Exactly.
So that happens very rarely, because even really good designers do take up multiple internships.
Yeah, because it's not just your work, right? At that point. Because it's also your passport in a way. In terms of getting job permits, in terms of getting all of this stuff.
Happened to me also.
Of course. I mean, I think it's happened to almost all designers who go from India, right? That's always a challenge. So you have to be extremely fortunate to sort of land something land an opportunity.
Yeah.
But it's also a matter of perspective, right? So a lot of designers, what they do, and like this I know now, because hindsight is 2020, that you should take the first opportunity that you get, right? In especially when you find yourself in that situation when you're abroad, right? What we tend to do is, if we don't get an OEM job, right, we don't take anything else. We keep trying for the same thing. That is, I think, the wrong approach towards it, right? In terms of that's when you start like giving up on it, right? Instead of doing something. In hindsight, like I should have sort of taken up something or the other in Italy. I'm pretty sure I could have found something, at least at like a smaller studio or something like that. But obviously, I didn't do that. And for example, in the case of Varun, right? And Varun is still working in Italy.
He's still there. I know, right?
He's still there, right? Like he chose to work with a certain studio, and like he's been there, and he's happy, right? So. That sort of thing, like where I wanted to like work for an OEM, and that's when I like when Honda came by, I was like, oh my god, this is it, like go. And that sort of, I think, not the right sort of approach.
All right. So now I'm yet to have a discussion with Varun though. But yeah,
I am sure that conversation is going to be much more entertaining than this one.
Knowing Varun, I know.
It's
going to be a lot of fun talking to Varun about the journey and everything. But so you moved to India, right? And applied at so many places, rejections, no answers, and all of that. So after realizing that this is not what's going to work, right? At some point you would have realized, nahi yaar, aise to nahi chalega, I should do something about this.
Right.
So I think that was the starting point of Navneeth becoming more than just a transportation designer.
Right.
Yeah.
I think at that point, it was more than just a career thing, right? It was more about, making a living in essence, right? Like you've taken out a massive loan to go and study, like you need to repay it now. So it's essentially being like pushed off a cliff, right? So either you learn how to fly or you fall and die. Or in like a lot of cases, you do fall and die multiple times. I think it's happened to a lot of people. It's about just keep getting up and keep trying, right? So I ended up back in India, and by whatever saving grace, I called up Dario Olivero from Doro Design, and he was a professor. Like he was our professor for our portfolio classes, and he always sort of like really liked my work, and he sort of suggested that okay, India is now starting to become a mature market. Right, so we should explore the possibility of offering design services in India. That's when we got started with the whole Doro Design India Association that we've had. We tried a bunch of stuff. We worked on it for a couple of years, and I think that was sort of a very, very different learning experience, right? Because here I was finding myself at a co-working space, right? Like working alongside like so many different people from so many different professions, and sort of it was very interesting getting everybody sort of approach towards different things. And also quite importantly, like how do I put it, like doing business development, right? Speaking to clients, speaking to customers, pitching ideas. And I think that's a very, very important thing for a designer to learn, to tell stories, right? And in this particular case, I think that's something that I had to learn along the way to sort of make things happen. And I think in certain ways, I think that was sort of one of the most important things that happened to me as a designer, because really that's when I started getting to do more than design. to get into more than transportation design.
Yeah.
Right. And it was along this way that I was still doing sort of freelance projects along with Rajat and etc. And
I distinctly remember. I think I visited you in Bangalore.
You did visit.
Yeah.
You did visit.
We work.
Yes.
Yeah,
We work in Hyderabad. Yeah, that was super fun.
Yeah. So I remember having this conversation with you then. About clients and everything. So, give me one thing that you learned during that phase, which helped you to communicate better with clients.
I don't know if I can break it down into one thing, right? Because it's a whole mindset change.
Okay.
Right? So because till now, all the design stories that you have been saying, like you have been telling people, are two designers. Right? So designers have like I was saying, a different lexicon of words, and other people, like other professionals, don't always understand. Right?
Yeah.
So that is when you sort of start realizing that there are people who do really cool stuff that have nothing to do with design, right?
Yeah.
Who would sort of enjoy these stories if they were told a little bit differently, right? And I think that's sort of very, very important for a designer to learn that storytelling, man. Like that, I think that's the key thing, but it's very difficult to put it down into objective points.
Yeah, understand. Cool. So now you are working in India in the design domain. So you had Italian design education.
Yeah.
So how's the experience, like with a degree or with an education from Europe? Italy, and working in a market like India.
Right. Very, very, very different sort of dynamics, let's say, in terms of how people perceive design and how much importance people give towards design. In India. You'll be surprised that it's not that Indians don't appreciate design. That's not true, right? When you have the right kind of design, for example, with our scooter, right, the reception that we got was insane. Like from across all domains, we've had people sort of come and sort of say that, okay, this is amazing, the design is great, right? I think that's not the thing. The thing is, again, building value to design, right? That is not something that is immediately apparent to a lot of people, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with sort of our education system and sort of what importance we place towards different professions in life, which isn't exactly always rational. Right? So I think that's one very, very key aspect of working in India. Again, I think it boils down to convincing people of what you're trying to do in a very holistic way, right? So again, it boils down to empathy, right? You need to understand what the other person actually wants for you to be able to sell what you have. To show what value that you're bringing to the table, you need to understand what exactly their pain points are.
Yeah.
So I think that is the trick to doing design in India, right? Because you need to be open to many different perspectives. I hear a lot of designers who are always complaining in a way ki in India you don't get to do this, you don't get to do that. But it's not completely true.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right, because for example, like at Dispatch, for instance, right, we don't follow the typical design process, not in the slightest, right? But we do design in a very different way. That I mean, Indians in a way they do appreciate. Right.
True.
So objectively, that's the case, according to me. It boils down to empathy, I think.
Very well put. I think it's very logical also the way you put it. For Indians to accept design, or I mean, there has been a lot of change how design is perceived in India.
Yeah.
It has evolved. It is growing, and a lot of companies are looking for designers. Even it's UX designers or UI UX designers or research part of it. I've known a few companies or startups who have started looking for UX because they want to do understand the situation and the customers and do well. Exactly. So which is good. So yeah, you're right in saying that empathy is the key.
Empathy is the key.
Yeah, it's really cool. True. And now when you have transformed from a transportation designer, according to what are your thoughts about transportation design in India?
Right.
And, the current situation.
Right.
So what are your thoughts about that?
So few things, right? And this is purely basis what I have seen, and with like the different portfolios that I sort of receive, and what I have seen, that see designers in India, and this is definitely not like all designers for sure, but overwhelmingly so, is building the right visual vocabulary, right, to express your ideas in ways that are perceived as really nice, cool stuff, right? Because a lot of designers, like I say, do things for themselves, right? And it's very important. For example, like we had the privilege of going to Italy and studying and sort of building our like visual vocabulary in terms of being exposed to like gorgeous cars, and gorgeous pieces of art, the city itself being so beautiful, and that sort of does affect the way that you design.
Yes,
it does for sure.
It does.
And I think it's very important, again, very holistically, that you observe a lot more, you see beauty in different things, and you understand culture, right? Because the kind of experience that we got in Italy was due to culture. Right? That sort of, but you don't immediately realize it. That's not something that we actively say ki this is the thing, like this is why it is so. But when you break it down, it comes down to that. Right? And in India, what I sort of see happening with a lot of designers is that they're so into the car design aspect of it that they don't look outside that. Right? Anything beyond that. Even if they do look beyond that, it's usually limited to Pinterest. Right? And when you take a look at the mood boards that some of these guys are putting together, it's sort of immediately apparent, the sort of visual language, that there's a mismatch. Right? It's really like taking different ideas, seeing different things that are cool, and putting it into one sort of mood board and putting that into a blender. And coming out with something. Right? Which, in my opinion, can work very rarely. Right? Because when you're sort of, like I said, answering a brief, you need to answer a lot of questions. Like it's your responsibility to ask questions, and it's your responsibility to answer those questions. It's not just functionality. It's not just styling. It's not just any one particular thing. There are a lot of things that you need to take into account. And another thing that you really should take into account is that whatever you design needs to be part of a certain landscape in the real world, right? Or a sci-fi world. If you're doing something for something, you're doing it for a sci-fi world. So you need to sort of really understand what kind of context you're designing for, and what the culture of that particular context is. Right?
Yeah.
For example, like with Dispatch for that matter, right? Like we're playing on the hopes and the dreams and the aspirations of people in India, right? We see stories of, and these are actual stories of delivery guys, right, who aspire to own a certain type of vehicle, right? And what they end up riding is not that at all. So it's when we started understanding the cultural aspirations of these guys that we were able to design something that would be perceived as cool. This is exactly what I was saying, right? You need to put yourself in those shoes and then design for yourself. Right? So if you were in that position, what would you design for yourself?
Makes sense.
I think, so I think that's what I see with Indian, a lot of Indian students. I'm not talking about professionals. We do have some crazy good guys over here. But with a lot of portfolios that sort of come across to me, the depth, right, that comes through exposure to culture is missing.
True.
Yeah.
True.
That is something that a lot of people can work on.
Yeah, that's a very insightful point that you've mentioned, and it's very true that I've also come across a few portfolios. Design students, graduates who apply for internships, whether it's a transportation designer who wants to switch to communication, graphic, or any other field, or even illustrations for that matter. So I've come across portfolios. There is a disconnect. Yes.
Yeah.
There is a disconnect. Like the first page of the project, the brief, the inspiration, and then the rest of the project is different.
Yeah, exactly. It's cookie cutter, right?
Yeah.
Like it's almost like you start with the sketch.
Yeah.
Then you just do the 3D model because you know how to use alias.
Yeah.
And then you come up with something, and then you're like, okay, now how do I tell the story?
Yeah.
Okay, ab mood board kaise banayenge? Last minute, just like in like an hour before you have the final presentation, you put together a mood board, right?
Yeah.
That's usually how it works. And as sad as it is, like even like design sketches for that matter, right? A lot of it happens after the actual design is done.
Yeah.
So that sort of lack of authenticity of process, right? Like it's almost immediately apparent.
Yeah. True.
When you look at certain projects.
True.
But there are, of course, whenever there is like an authentic approach towards a certain topic, like you immediately see it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's not something that you can ever cheat, really.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Cool. So, and about the current situation that we're in. So EVs were supposed to be flooding Indian markets by now, but didn't happen because of the situation and challenges around it. So, but we're still moving ahead with the two-wheelers more of rather than the four-wheelers as of now.
Right.
So, what do you think in the future? Let's say, of course, we cannot predict what is going to happen as far as the situation, this COVID is concerned. But in this time, there are students graduating, right? There are students who are looking for internships. There are students who want to maybe switch companies.
Right.
So what do you think they should be focusing on right now?
Right. I think, and not to like take a casual approach towards the situation, but I think these guys, and it's sad because they won't see it until they look back on it. But this, in a way, is sort of an opportunity, right? Quite similar to the opportunity that I sort of found myself in, right? In the sense that you're currently stuck here. You can't really think about going abroad right now.
Yeah.
Right. So in essence, like there are two things that you can do. Either you can choose to work on your portfolio on your own, right? Or you can reach out to a lot of different people in the industry. You can shadow a lot of people in the industry. You're staying at home. You don't have any requirement for, I mean, to a certain degree, of course, everybody has requirement for money, right?
Yeah.
But compared to a usual scenario,
Yeah.
in this particular scenario that you find yourself in, where you're like sitting in pajamas all day, every single day,
yeah,
you can definitely afford to, in a way, take up projects and sort of improve the value of a certain product through design for somebody who's not from the design industry, right? So this, I think, is an opportunity that is unprecedented to learn for a lot of different people. Obviously, I mean, we have to be sensitive towards the fact that not everybody has that privilege, right? A lot of people do definitely need a certain amount of money every month and all of this stuff. And that is for sure. But even in that particular scenario, like, you can actually start freelancing. Like, you can afford to take that risk right now if you're not finding anything else to do. Right? I genuinely think that more than just sitting and working on your portfolio on your own, right? What is your portfolio? Your portfolio is a story of who you are, right? Sitting and just doing your portfolio on your own doesn't build your personality. That will come through experience. Right? So the more projects that you do, the more you find yourself. So I think to all the young designers who are right now like sitting at home like without much to do, right? I think they should reach out to a lot of different people who are building a lot of different things. There are a crazy amount of startups out there that are trying to build things, and some of them more promising than the others. And whatever you feel you have a connect to, right? I think you should reach out to them.
Right. Cool.
And also just to add, I say this because our first hire, right, at our company, and this was when we started out. I think it was somewhere in August. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It was a guy who reached out to me through Reddit.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
An engineer, but he reached out through Reddit when we were hiring, and that sort of what do you call resourcefulness in terms of using every single platform you have available to you to sort of reach out and find an opportunity, right? I think that was something that I realized that I lacked at that particular point in time. Right? For me, it was just like going to the car manufacturer's website, going to the career page, and finding, and then LinkedIn, adding people, asking them. But there was never a hatke approach, right? And I think that is what is sort of needed. Like, you need to keep all your options open.
And before we come close this conversation, I would want to ask you: is there anything that you want to, mention it to the students in particular?
Right. So I think I already covered this in the previous one, but still worth reiterating. Two things actually. Like, I'm realizing throughout this conversation, I'm realizing myself that one is that money is not everything, right? As a designer, like you need to start doing things and proving your worth before like you can actually start building something for yourself in terms of your how much money you make and whatnot. Like, you can either choose to have the regular approach, or if you're a freelancer, this is how it goes, right? And the other thing, very, very important, I've said it a million times, I think, during this conversation, it's empathy. Right? You have to be empathetic to every stakeholder in the scenario, and the moment you start understanding them, they usually make an effort to understand you and where you're coming from, and you find a middle ground. Right? And this applies to anybody, not just engineers, not just business people, not just anything, but you need to have that sort of approach in order to build conversation, right? You cannot afford to sit there and think you know better.
Yeah.
Right? You don't. It's a fact, right? Like, you know a certain process, but in this particular scenario, the person who is coming to you with the problem knows more about the problem than you do.
Yeah.
Right? So it's very important to stay humble, stay super empathetic towards any given design challenge, and sort of work along with people rather than against them. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's one sort of message that I can leave.
That's very deep, and yeah. I mean, my experience, it has taken me, I think, years to learn that.
Right.
Yeah, it's looking back. Somebody would, when I started out, even like making those illustrations in the first place. Back to 2014, 2015. If somebody would come and tell me that, okay, this could be like this, ऐसे क्यों बना है, वैसे हो सकता है, I would go crazy. Like, क्या बात कर रहा है यार, सही तो है. So I would take that approach for sure. But yeah, looking back, but I realized that taking feedback is something that Iyad also taught me. I cannot add to that more because you summed it up very nicely, and thank you for doing that. And such an interesting journey you've had, like phases from a kid who wants to be a transportation designer, then you go to Japan, go to Italy, go to Japan.
Right.
Like visited, like been into different countries, cultures, environments, realizations, decisions, evolution. Amazing journey, and I'm sure the listeners will definitely benefit a lot from this conversation, because these are the things that need to be told when it comes to transportation design, in particular, because it looks very fancy
on the outside.
Yeah, on the outside it looks very fancy, and it is on the inside as well, but not as much as you expect it to be. The reality is a little different. The kind of work that you get to do is a little different. So, so thank you for joining, and thank you for sharing your story with me.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk. It's been a while coming. I've always said, karenge, but glad to finally do it.
Yeah.
Super.
Pleasure, man. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.